Hello, I'm Attorney Todd Leneve. Welcome to West Virginia Gun Law. Today I wanted to take just a few minutes and speak with you about expungement under West Virginia's law. Stick around. So a history of certain types of criminal convictions can cause a person to be prohibited from lawfully possessing a firearm. We deal with this an awful lot here and have helped a lot of people get their records cleared so that they could restore their firearms rights and be able to take full advantage of the Second Amendment in a lawful manner. Under our law, which came into effect in its current form in 2019, we can help you pursue an expungement of misdemeanor convictions and felony convictions as long as those are non-violent felonies. And those types of cases are often the ones that will prevent somebody from being able to lawfully possess a firearm simply by virtue of the fact that it is a felony conviction. Now, misdemeanor convictions are rarely an issue with firearms ownership unless they fall under a domestic violence category, and unfortunately under our law you cannot expunge a domestic violence conviction. So even though it's a misdemeanor, it does have the effect of disqualifying you from lawfully possessing a firearm. But the bigger issue that we typically see are these felony convictions for nonviolent matters. Could be something like embezzlement, possession of narcotics, things that don't involve doing physical harm to another person and fall into that realm of being considered a violent felony. Now, there are several classes of felony offenses under our expungement statute that would not be able to be expunged. Those primarily, again, include violent crimes, sexual crimes, crimes against children, and similar violent type things, robberies, armed robberies, and conspiracy to commit any of those types of offenses. So if that's the situation that you find yourself facing, there's a pretty good chance that you're not going to be eligible to have that expunged under our state law as it currently exists. But it's always worth checking into the scenario, finding out from a qualified attorney if in fact you may be eligible for expungement. The worst you can find out is that in fact, no, you are not eligible. But under the law, the way it currently exists, people with a misdemeanor conviction or misdemeanor convictions, plural, can seek expungement after the passage of a certain amount of time. For a single misdemeanor conviction, that's 1 year. If you have multiple misdemeanor convictions, you have to wait until 2 years. And that time frame is calculated based on the date on which you completed all of your obligations for that underlying conviction. Whether that was a jail sentence, a sentence of probation, anything like that, the last day that your obligation to the state concluded is the day that we use to begin calculating your date of eligibility. Now with felonies it's a little bit more, again because a felony is a bit more serious typically. We look at a 5-year period from the date that the last sentence obligation was completed before you would be eligible to seek expungement. But once that 5-year window has passed, we can jump into court and file a petition, and we can ask the court to consider setting aside your conviction, sealing the record, expunging the record, and making sure that there's no trace of it that would follow you going forward. So the process is pretty straightforward, but you've got to do it carefully, and you have to make sure that you cover all the bases that are necessary to get a court to look favorably on your petition. One of the big things that we always encourage folks to consider is that the court is directed to take a look at the things that you've done with your life since the date of the conviction that show that you have tried to turn the corner and live life in a more productive way, being a better contributing member of society. And so I always encourage people who have reached out to me and aren't yet eligible time-wise to get involved in the community. Find an organization that you enjoy volunteering with and spend time with them. Go get some further education, maybe a certification, a professional certification, or certification in a trade, something that allows you to change the quality of your life, so that when the time comes for the expungement to be considered, the judge is able to see that you've done things, you've taken steps to sort of separate yourself from the past. And so little things like that can have a huge impact on the success of an expungement petition. In addition to those sorts of things, we generally need to get a whole copy of the old case record, provide that to the court, show them what the history of the case was, and then show, again, what a change you've made in your life and how you're a different person today than you were at the time of the offense that led to your underlying conviction. But once that's all done, one of the great things is that under our statute, if the judge grants your expungement, your firearms rights are also restored automatically. Now, it's important to understand that even though that expungement does result in the restoration of your firearms rights, you may see a period of time before you are able to successfully make a purchase, because the reality is that the federal government seems to hang on to records longer than anybody else does, and there may be some little shred of evidence that's hanging out somewhere in the system that did not get addressed in the expungement case that could in fact cause a delay or a denial in your attempt to purchase a firearm. If that would happen, there are certain steps that we can take to ensure that we can overcome that and get you cleared to be able to possess firearms again. But unfortunately, sometimes those things happen without any ability for us to be prepared for them in advance. So understand that going through the expungement process may well clear the path for you, but there could still be a couple of small hurdles that we have to deal with down the road. Another important point I think that people don't always understand is that with an expungement, it's totally discretionary with the judge who is assigned to the case. In other words, they are not bound by law to grant you an expungement. Now, you have an absolute right to request it. That's what the law says. You can request it. There's no limitation on that aside from not being able to request expungement of an ineligible conviction. But even though you have an absolute right to seek expungement, it's up to the judge who has your case to make that final determination whether or not you're going to be granted that expungement. In my personal experience, I believe I've only seen one case in which a court denied my client's attempt to expunge their record, and that was kind of a unique situation anyway. And as much as I don't like the outcome, I can understand why the judge came down on that side of things in this case in particular. That being said, that's the only case that I've ever had in which the expungement was not granted. Now, please understand, I'm not saying that that means that you've got a clear path to expungement if you find yourself as a person who would be eligible to seek expungement. It's a case-by-case basis. The judge in your case is going to do things the way the judge in your case chooses to do things. And a lot of factors are going to come into play as they approach the case and decide what they want to do with the petition. But we have a right to request it, and if you've done everything the correct way, you've followed the guidance that I've given you, we've been able to put together a good packet of information, there's a very good chance that we're going to be able to get a judge to look at your case favorably and ultimately strike that criminal conviction from your history, meaning your record is clear, it gets expunged, and your Second Amendment rights are restored. This is a topic that we could actually spend an awful lot of time on. I didn't want to do that here today. I wanted to introduce the idea to you that there is a path forward if you have a conviction history that's preventing you from being able to own a firearm. So if you find yourself in that position and you want to ask some questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll be happy to speak with you about that. We can talk about how the law may apply to your situation and what we may be able to do to help you with that process. And I will be happy to spend time to make sure that you understand your options and help you make that decision on what you want to do to proceed. If you have questions about this topic, and perhaps it's something that directly impacts you, reach out to me. My contact information is available through my website, which is linked in the description below, and I'd be happy to hear from you and talk about the options you have. In the meantime, I appreciate you stopping by. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so. hit that like button, share this information with your friends. Let's get out there ahead of the anti-Second Amendment algorithm and make sure that as many people as possible know about this, because an awful lot of folks are in fact affected by this particular issue. Again, I appreciate you spending a few minutes with me. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then, take care.